These Rwandans, are they complaining? Or have they sent you to complain on their behalf? Yes, but as long as there is a reason, that reason, I don't give a damn.
Is your intention to take Gitarama first or to take Kigali first?
That remains my secret.
Whether this Eastern Congo situation and what comes out flows over to our territory or anything else, we are ready to fight.
So if you attack me, you then start giving me instructions of how I should react. They draw cartoons, they call me Hitler, I know them, I see them. I'm not bothered at all. I don't need permission from anybody. If you slap me in the face, before I hit back, I may not hit in the face, I may hit somewhere else. So I have to think and see where I'm going to hit.
But you will hit.
There's no question about it.
For many people in Rwanda, it was an ordinary day on October 23rd, 1957. However, it was also the birth of Paul Kagame, the man who will go on to change Rwanda in more ways than one. Kagame's father was a cattle herder and a businessman, and a member of the Tutsi elite in Rwanda, while his mother was known as a homemaker and a cousin of Rwandan's Queen Rosalie Gisenda, the wife of King Mutara III. She played a significant role in raising Paul Kagame and his 6 siblings. Paul's family connection to the royal family secured them some protection from the violent political campaigns often carried out by the Hutu majority against the Tutsi minority elites. As a result, his family lived a relatively comfortable life by the Rwandan standard at the time. During the colonization, Rwanda was a land filled with heavy ethnic division. The colonial empires of both German and then Belgium systematically favored the Tutsi over the Hutus, sowing seeds of bitterness and discord. In 1959, when Rwanda was on the verge of independence, tension erupted violently. The Hutus, less favored by the colonial powers, rose up in a brutal incident that led to massacres and displacement of thousands of Tutsis. This marked the collapse of Tutsi dominance and the beginning of even greater ethnic division. Villages were plunged into chaos as local peasants, armed with machetes, clubs, spears, and occasional rifles, unleashed a wave of terror. They went from home to home, setting homes on fire, chasing out families, and even slaughtering them where they stood. As the chaos grew, prominent Tutsis like Paul's family became target of relentless harassment and threats of arrest. After some time, the 24-month-old Paul and his family flew to Uganda, abandoning their home, which was soon destroyed by the looters, who stole anything valuable. Decades later, Paul would return to his birthplace only to find something that would change his mindset. He remembered his family fleeing from nearby Nyanza after spending 14 days before taking the path north toward his mother's homeland near the Ugandan border. They hoped things would improve so they would return home, but unfortunately they did not. In 1961, they and many other families decided to cross the border to Uganda, Angoli province, where refugee camps were established for Rwandan exiles. After some time, the family moved away, going further north and finally arriving at another refugee camp in Toro district, where they settled in mid-1962. They stayed there for the rest of Paul's childhood years.
I grew up in Uganda in a refugee camp. My family, lining up for the ration to survive on every day.
The refugee camps were unwelcome, poorly equipped, and rarely supplied, leaving the refugees to struggle in desperate conditions. With limited humanitarian assistance, the Ugandan authorities had to find a solution for the exiles. They gave the refugees land to farm, but many still had to work for the local farmers to survive because the land wasn't enough for all of them. Despite these challenges, the Rwandan refugees started to integrate into the Ugandan society. They learned English on top of their colonial language, French, and over time, they began to see themselves as Ugandans. Their direct attachment to Rwanda gradually faded, especially as the political situation in Rwanda remained dangerous and unstable, making it hard for them to even think of going back home. Their children suffered the most from the refugee life, mistreatment, and constant reminder by the Ugandans that they were outsiders. Young Paul was no exception, but he managed to find a friend in Fred Giza Rwigema, a friend Paul didn't know he needed. Fred Rwigema's family fled Rwanda in 1960 when he was just 3 years old due to the political unrest in the country. In Uganda, Fred and Paul became close friends and comrades, bonding over their shared experiences and aspiration for Rwandan's future. Their friendship and partnership were so strong that many people unfamiliar with their story often assumed they were brothers. In the Toro district, Paul attended primary school alongside other refugee children where he learned English. At 9, he transitioned to a Ugandan state school in Ruwengero where he began mingling with local children. Despite the challenges of being a refugee, Paul excelled in his studies, consistently performing well and finishing at the top of his class in his final year of primary school. His academic achievement laid the foundation for his future success in leadership roles. Paul was very good academically but faced many challenges due to his Rwandan origins. According to the regulations, the top 3 performing students were granted admission to the secondary school. But despite topping the class, Paul was labeled as not eligible. Feeling with little hope of pursuing a secondary education, Paul was devastated and distressed over whether he would be able to achieve his dreams or not, until a family friend in Belgium lent a hand to assist him to attend Natari Secondary School. During his secondary school times, young Paul would often ask his father,
When I was at the age of 11, I asked my own father what actually we had done to deserve being refugees, living in a refugee camp.
Of which his dad found so hard to respond to, since he considered Paul too young to understand the whole situation. In 1972, Paul's academic performance declined due to the death of his father and the departure of his close friend Fred Rwigema to an unknown location. And in 1975, Paul was expelled from Natari Secondary School. The expulsion was both personal and political motivated. Paul was caught in a fight with those who belittled the Rwandans, and at the time, there was a political tension and conflict in Uganda. As a Rwandan refugee in Uganda, and involved in students' activities that were seen as politically subversive by the authority, his expulsion was part of the broader political repression under the regime of Idi Amin. He then completed his studies without distinctions at Old Kampala Secondary School. Since fleeing Rwanda when he was 2 years old, Paul Kagame had never been able to return to his homeland. However, he became increasingly curious about his country. He started making plans to visit his home country, even if only for a short period of time. In 1977, Paul met Rwandan teachers who were part of the Rwandan refugee community in Uganda at his new school. He told them of his intention to visit his homeland. These teachers, understanding the significance of such a visit for Paul and having connection back home in Rwanda, helped him arrange the trip. Through their contacts and detailed plans and instructions, the visit allowed Paul to see firsthand the condition in Rwanda, which deeply influenced his future political and military activities. During the short visit, Paul witnessed the harsh realities and difficult living conditions faced by his relatives and other Tutsi people whom had remained in Rwanda after the 1952 revolution and subsequent ethnic violence. He saw the poverty, oppression, and discrimination they had endured under the Hutu-dominated government. These experiences had a profound impact on Paul, strengthening his resolve to work towards improving the situation for the Tutsi population and ultimately contributing to his later involvement in the Rwandan Patriotic Front and the struggle for change in Rwanda. After some months of returning to Uganda, Paul decided to go back again to Rwanda in 1978. But this time, he took a different path. He went through southwest Uganda into Zaire, then passed through Rutsuru area to Goma before crossing into Rwanda via the road to Gisenyi. The country was quiet at the time under juvenile Habyarimana Hutus-led government, which began in 1972. Paul was very lucky that the authorities at the time did not know he was related to the former Tutsi royal family and was a refugee from Uganda. His journey would have been a disaster. Paul later said this. His 1977 and 1978 trips to Rwanda broadened his understanding of Rwandan's economic and political challenges and cemented the idea of getting involved in the political process. In late 1978, Paul Kagame reunited with his childhood friend, Fred Rwigema, in western Uganda. Rwigema had fought in the 1979 war with Museveni's rebel group, frontrunners allied with the Tanzanian army and other Ugandan exiles to defeat Idi Amin. In the mid-1980s, Paul joined the Ugandan military, where he got to know Museveni, who was then a political activist and a determined opponent of his country's authorities after losing the 1980 polls. As they got to know each other, they discovered that they were closely related, Museveni being from the Hima, a subgroup of the Bayankole ethnic group closely related to the Tutsis. Museveni's opposition to Obote's regime led to the formation of National Resistance Army in 1981. Among Museveni's early recruits were Fred Rwigema, Kagame's childhood friend, who had trained with Museveni in Tanzania and Mozambique. Months later, Kagame and other Rwandan refugees, inspired by Rwigema, pledged alliances and become close allies of Museveni. Upon joining Museveni's group, Paul traveled to Tanzania, where he was trained as a spy by the Tanzanian government, which supported the new rebel group. In mid-1981, dissatisfied with President Milton Obote, Museveni's newly formed National Resistance Army launched its first military strike against the Ugandan government. Paul was among the 27 NRA guerrillas, including Fred Rwigema, which marked the beginning of the subsequent Ugandan Bush War. During the Bush War, Paul served as an intelligence officer in the NRA, gathering information in rural areas and crucial tasks in guerrilla war with limited troops and support. He often went on missions alone or with only one or two officers to assess potential targets or gather details about the government's strengths and operations. After 6 years as a specialist in intelligence, Paul rose to head of military intelligence in Museveni's army following Milton Obote's overthrow in 1986. Similarly, Rwigema became a celebrated fighter, rising to Major General and Deputy Commander of the Uganda National Army. And shortly before, a family relative had introduced Paul to a young lady named Janet Nyaramangi. The introduction was facilitated through social and familial connection within the community. Their relationship developed from the initial meeting, eventually leading to their marriage after 3 years of knowing each other. Janet was in Uganda as part of the Rwandan exile community. She was living in Uganda because her family, like many other Rwandans, had fled to escape the political instability and violence in Rwanda. Armed with military and political experiences from the NRA and NRM respectively, Paul Kagame, Fred Rwigema, and other Rwandan exiles who fought for Yoweri Museveni began to ask why they couldn't do the same for Rwanda. This led to the formation of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF. In 1987, Fred Rwigema became the RPF president with Kagame as a co-leader. Rwigema was charismatic and well-liked, while Paul was serious and meticulous. These complementary traits helped them to lead the RPF, despite their rise in Ugandan's government. Prejudice against Rwandan refugees grew.
We denounced them. Police was indisciplined. To use our territory, use our army, start such a big operation.
By late 1989, Museveni demoted both Kagame and Rwigema, and in 1990, as part of Museveni's strategy to delay RPF's planned invasion of Rwanda, he sent Paul for military training in the United States. Meanwhile, Rwandan exiles in Uganda felt increasingly unwelcome and continued organizing and arming the RPF. The RPF campaigned for the repatriation of refugees and opposed Habyarimana's corrupt and repressive regime, which was losing support due to corruption, repression, and economic decline, partly due to a drop in international coffee prices, Rwandan's main export. In August 1990, amidst political tension in Rwanda and the growing threats Opposed by the Rwandan Patriotic Front, two Rwandan elites flew to Kampala with tales of Habyarimana's regime nearing collapse, seeking refuge and safety. They are believed to have provided valuable intelligence information about the internal situation in Rwanda. Shortly afterward, Rwema led the RPF's first attack from Uganda to Rwanda, starting a 4-year civil war. However, the invasion was disastrous, and Rwema himself was killed in combat on the second day, leaving the RPF demoralized. After the international community learned about the attacks, France, Belgium, and Zaire intervened to support the Rwandan government. France sent about 150 troops, Belgium sent over 400 paratroops, and Zaire sent 700 of its top guards. France later committed an additional 600 troops and provided logistical support and military supplies worth over $10 million. Rwema's death forced Paul to abandon his mission in the United States and return to take over the RPF. He then reorganized, strengthened the RPF into a disciplined and effective guerrilla force. This reorganization process included training, restructuring, and strategic planning to enhance the RPF's capabilities and effectiveness in combat. Despite substantial support for Habyarimana government from France, Belgium, and Zaire, the RPF managed to take control of increasing territory, causing widespread violence, displacement, and loss of life. Despite the ongoing hostilities, effort towards a negotiated settlement began to gain momentum, with various international mediators, including the United Nations and neighboring countries. Paul was open to negotiations, leading to an agreement in August 1993 in Arusha, Tanzania, to create a broad-based transitional government, including the RPF. While this generated goodwill and economic aid outside Rwanda, it was strongly opposed by Hutu extremists, who intensified their anti-Tutsi propaganda, fueling ethnic violence in Rwanda. On the evening of April 6, 1994, a plane carrying the Rwandan President Juvenile Habyarimana and the Burundian President was shot down as it approached Kigali, killing everyone on board. The exact circumstances surrounding the shooting down of the plane remain the subject of debate and controversy, but the event served as a catalyst for the Rwandan genocide, which began the following day. The assassination of the President Habyarimana, who was from the Hutu ethnic group, led to a rapid escalation of violence as extremist Hutu militia launched a campaign of systematically mass killing targeting Tutsis and moderate Hutus. The next day, Rwandan's Prime Minister, a moderate Hutu, was assassinated along with 10 Belgian UN peacekeepers guarding her. This was part of a plan to eliminate moderate politicians, creating a political vacuum for Hutu extremists to form an interim government. On April 8, Theodore Sendikabwabo, the Speaker of the National Development Council, became interim president, and the new government was inaugurated on April 9, 1994. The RPF rejected this and resumed fighting. By April 12, RPF troops had reached the outskirts of Kigali and engaged in furious battles with the government forces and militia as they sought to put an end to the genocide and establish control over the country. The RPF's advances and eventually capture Kigali in July 1994 marked the end of the genocide and the beginning of a new chapter in Rwandan history. In response, the interim government fled to Zaire, and about 1 million Hutus fled the country fearing retribution. The full extent of the genocide gradually came to light. RPF soldiers also carry out retribution killings and violence against Hutu civilians, including those suspected of participating in or supporting the genocide. While the RPF leadership, including Paul Kagame, condemned such actions and stated that they did not support reprisal killings. There were instances where RPF soldiers were implicated in carrying out atrocities. In the aftermath of the genocide, there were also concerns about the presence of armed militias and extremist elements among the Hutu refugees who had fled Rwanda and sought refuge in neighboring countries. This contributed to a regional instability and tension. Rwanda faced significant challenges in terms of reconciliation, recovery, and rebuilding. On July 19, 1994, a transitional government of national unity was formed, with Pastoral Bizimungu, a Hutu, as president and Paul Kagame as vice president. Though Bizimungu was the president, Kagame held the real power. From 1994 to 1995, Tutsi, many for the first time in years, returned to Rwanda. In 2000, Pastoral Bizimungu resigned from the presidency, reportedly under pressure following a fallout with Rwandan Patriotic Front. Paul Kagame assumed the presidency thereafter and has remained in power since, leading the country through its post-genocide recovery and development. He was subsequently elected in office in 2003 and then re-elected for a second and third term in 2010 and 2011 respectively.